Hello, Partisia community. We are here today to do a special podcast about the FTX fiasco. So, I am Jennifer DeBroy, Director of Thought Leadership at Partisia Blockchain. And I have with me today Brian Gallagher, our co founder, who is going to deliver his insight into what happened and how we can protect our community and the crypto economy from this happening again. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Jennifer. Lot to talk about for sure.
Exactly. So let's dive in. What happened with FTX?
Yeah, so I think at this point, we're a bit late in the game to try to explain it. It's pretty much out in the open now, but essentially, Alameda Research, FTX, supposed to be two separate entities. They functioned as sort of one entity. And at some point, Alameda Research decided to use the customer deposits on hand at FTX in order to place high risk, leveraged bets in the marketplace, which went the wrong direction. And they were liquidated and lost all of those funds. And when customers started to want to withdraw, they noticed a few anomalies. And then it became more clear when CZ announced he was moving 500 million of the FTT token out to sell, that there was something going on. And so then a rush to withdraw funds occurred. And after a certain point, there were no funds left. So withdrawals stopped. And at that point, after the gig was up, everyone knows they're out of money. And I think the numbers came in, there was about 900 million on hand at FTX, but 8 billion or so in customer deposits. So once that 901 millionth dollar attempted to get withdrawn, they just had to pause withdrawals and say, no more funds. And so that leaves a $7 billion hole. Those are rough numbers. Who knows what the reality is, but it's way out there. It's a way big number.
Do you think it's normal when a person has a lot of tokens that they should announce beforehand that they're going to sell those tokens? Because won't that influence the market?
Well, it depends what context you're talking about. Who is the person?
Well, CZ put on Twitter, "Oh, I'm going to sell all my FTT." And then isn't this what caused the panic to occur?
Yeah, there was some transparency there, just saying, hey, we're selling a big position because we are a bit nervous about market, the outstanding sort of reality of the FTT market. And it caused a lot of people to investigate. And so one thing I want to make clear actually is that the blockchain provided a level of transparency that the traditional banking system wouldn't have. So once the funds flowed out into the Binance wallet, wherever they were transferred to, people could then start looking closer at the blockchain and try to look around and see what funds were in different wallets that may have been controlled by FTX. So there was a much easier sort of public forensic accounting experiment that occurred where everyone started investigating on the chain to see where funds were. And then it became very obvious there wasn't going to be enough funds to cover the customer deposits. And so the withdrawals started, the panic really kicked in, and then we saw what happened.
Is that sort of what happened when now they're saying that there was a hack? So when people were investigating these different wallets, there was a discovery of some sort of hack. What's that all about?
No one knows what the hack was about yet. Apparently, an insider might have used what they're saying as a backdoor to access funds. These are all just Twitter people saying that. There's no proof yet. So, my one good friend, Nick, went to the Bahamas to try to be a citizen journalist and investigate what's going on. And Twitter was saying that, the team fled to Argentina, but Nick was there and found out that he's under house arrest in Bahamas right now, according to the locals. So you have to be careful what you're reading on Twitter. It's a bunch of news, but nothing's verified. There's no charges that are public yet. At least I haven't looked around in the last few hours. Maybe that's changed, but as far as I'm aware. So that's important to keep in mind is wait till you see the real facts and see what happens.
So, sorry, I'm just getting a delivery of some tea.
Nope.
So after what's happened with Terra Luna, with Celsius, and now FTX, how can we still have confidence in crypto?
So there's a bigger picture thing that we need to talk about here, and it's the way that the economy functions in a much bigger macro scale. And so people are pointing the finger at crypto right now. However, this system of lending and derivatives and high leveraged bets is not something that's limited to crypto. And it's actually what caused the financial crash of 2007, 2008. This same type of behavior, derivative, options plays, and using customer funds to make those gambles, that's what the banks were doing. And the banks lost $700 billion, all the customer money, and they got a bailout from the US government, who just sent them the money back, took it as a loan from the taxpayers of the United States, and we just essentially pretended nothing ever happened. No one was arrested or went to jail. So that set an absolutely horrible precedent, and nothing has changed. That still is going on in the real economy. And so there's a high chance that we're going to see that type of scenario happen again, where the bank is out of money. FTX is a relatively small bonanza compared to the macro environment that has $1 trillion of leveraged exposure that could wipe out at any day. What makes FTX so bad and why he should go to jail is because it was premeditated, if it's true what we're hearing. So if there was back doors so he could move funds around without people realizing who was controlling what, then, and he was virtue signaling how compliant they were and showing up to political sessions, talk about how blockchain is so much more transparent than the real economy and how compliant FTX is and how they set the new standards. Those lies compared to the actual behavior are so egregious that he deserves way more jail time than even if you look at the Wolf of Wall Street guy, I mean, he served, I don't remember, 10 years maybe? Sorry if I'm wrong, but point is, if that guy was a salesman of, low liquidity, high risk penny stocks, and he did hard time when he knew that a lot of those stocks never were even real companies that were going to go anywhere, but he continued to sell them and market them. This is so much worse what he did, because he was even deploying coins and controlling the whole supply and using his funds to pump the price and then sell it to the customers on those exchanges. So he was doing so many things that are criminal. And it's an absolute, it's an unbelievable offense against the industry, because it makes the industry look bad. But really, it was a criminal intent manipulation play with his PR and the stadium rights. When you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to name stadiums, it comes into question. First of all, I never trusted FTX, never made an account. It was always suspect, because you can't, first off, that exchange wasn't even high quality. If you did go on the website and click around, so something was off for the market cap, how much money they're making, and what they say about their exchange. The volume was, was good, but it didn't reflect the $30 billion company's, trade books. So interesting to note that their KPI was most likely, hey, if we name a stadium and pay $100 million, we get $300 million more in customer deposits. So they were probably just trying to get money into the exchange that they could gamble with. And it all blew up, and it looks horrible, but he needs to go to jail. And the point of crypto and blockchain is the Bitcoin, Bitcoin didn't commit a fraud. Bitcoin is running 24/7 and it's not changing. The protocol is there. It's not hacked. So this is a centralized player who lied and cheated, and he just needs to be charged and, give him a fair trial. We don't really know the truth. So you have to always, keep, in America, at least, we have due process, innocent until proven guilty. It looks horrible on the surface, but he still needs to go through the court system.
So what about people who are using crypto investors using other exchanges? Can they still feel like their exchange is safe, or should they be doing some investigations on their own just to be sure?
Well, it's a bit corny to say, but not your keys, not your coins. That's something that the OGs of crypto preach all the time. And it's just the truth. The purpose of cryptocurrency is self-custody, the ability to control the keys to your coins. And that's what makes it special, right? It's decentralized. There's no single controller. When you turn over your keys to an exchange that all of a sudden gets $10 billion worth of crypto, they become the controller of all those keys, right? And now you see what happens. Some people get greedy and they don't have control. Maybe there was intent in the first place. Maybe they just get greedy later. They didn't go into it with malintent, but then they just take a bad risk and they lose people's money. So you just need to use crypto the way it's supposed to be used. But again, let's talk about the regulation. It's, now crypto's going to be regulated. This is a systemic macro problem that is way bigger than crypto. There's derivatives and lending all over the place in the macro economy. The GameStop saga is the perfect example. You had an options lender, I don't know if lenders are, but an options writer, who essentially was writing all these options on GameStop stock. And they were writing lottery ticket options. So they would sell you a one-day expiration option on GameStop and say, hey, if it goes from $2 to $20, you make 1,000x your money. And so they, in their slumber, they think every day they issue that, and some, as they would say, idiot buys it. That's probably how they thought of their customer. It's like just free money for them. But then, similar to, this bank run, people did a bit of investigating and realized, wow, they're writing all these options. And if we all buy and it goes up at the same time, we're going to make 1,000x. So a huge army of money rallied to run the price up against those options and then call them and then liquidate the company. And so it worked. And then all of a sudden the price got so high that option writer had no more money to pay out and they went completely bankrupt. But where the scam is that got swept under the rug and not talked about because our media does no investigation. This is like one of the biggest financial stories of the last year. And where has Bloomberg been in the Bahamas? Where is CNN? Why aren't they down there with reporters? Why is Nick O'Neill, the founder of the Nifty, which is a small NFT podcast, why is he the only one down there? Right? Our financial media is a complete joke. So the reason that you don't hear about what really goes on is they don't do investigations because of some special interest. So the crazy thing is when that options writer went under and they couldn't pay out anymore, that's when Robinhood paused the buy button. And the reason they did that is because if they would have doubled the price one more time, the exposure was so big, it could have been 100 billion in exposure. And it would have happened is that firm would have gone under. And someone like Citadel or whoever was behind this, they wouldn't be able to even cover 100 billion. But they wrote options on 300 other stocks that they had liability to pay on. So imagine if they went out of money, but then all these other people were with other stocks had sort of, call options that could say, hey, now my stock is this price, you owe me this money. They wouldn't have been able to pay it out. So the whole system would have collapsed. So we almost saw a global market collapse from the GameStop thing. It was way bigger than the story happened to be. But they swept it under the rug. And so it was interesting is that Token 2049, I was on a panel and I talked about this exact scenario. And I said, when it comes to regulation, they can't just point at crypto and say, we need to watch this and, keep everything so centralized. Centralizing it more isn't going to help to try to control everything. Because what happens is in the closed centralized economy of banks and brokerages on Wall Street, we have no idea at any time the true exposure on options. And if you look into naked option fines, there's like hundreds of millions or billions a year in fines of firms writing options or selling stock they don't actually have. So like naked short selling. They're borrowing shares from somewhere else and selling it. So they're finding like spots to just get money on shares they don't even own by borrowing them. But it turns out they don't even borrow them. They just fake sell it. And so the exchanges on the crypto were doing that too. That's what SBF was doing. He's just selling tokens he didn't even have to users, right? Because you could have, the day before this all came out, you could have gone in there and bought 10 million worth of Bitcoin off the order book, but there was no Bitcoin in their treasury. So they're selling Bitcoin that didn't exist. The same thing happens in the real markets. And so what we should focus on is actually using blockchain for its purpose. So if I had to say, how can we regulate something here? What we could do is say everyone custodying third party needs to, if they're going to do a loan or they're going to collateralize an asset of theirs, they should put it in a smart contract so that it's transparent and that there's a calculated, open amounts of loans outstanding, because when you don't know what's really being lent behind the scenes, you don't know the contagion risk if it all falls apart. And so that's kind of what we saw happen. There was all this private dealings of private contracts with each other that were collateralized that no one in the crypto industry knew about except the big players who were involved. In this case, 3AC, Alameda Research, Genesis. No one's talking about that, but I'm pretty sure they were the market maker that dumped all the UST on a Friday night when it was an illiquid asset that caused this crash, the beginning of the crash. So basically, it's about not having secret backdoor dealings going on. So that would be the one way you could potentially fix things, and that would help the macro economy, not just crypto. This is a macro risk of derivative markets where there's not a known liability that's traceable at any time. So it's very complicated, but it can be done. But to just say, oh, we're going to shut this down and not allow it, that's not productive. So we'll see. I don't really have much confidence that the regulator has any clue how to address this, because they can't address their own problems first, which is Wall Street. What just happened is happening right now on Wall Street in $1 trillion amount. It's happening. If we all decided to go to our bank tomorrow and demand our money, they would not have it. And they're open about that. It's fractional reserve banking. They wouldn't have it. It'd be another situation where the bank would need to call the Federal Reserve and take money loans with printed money out of thin air. So the system is in a house of cards, essentially. So until they clean that up first, this is such a small fry compared to what's going on in the bigger macro environment. So Sam's a criminal. He needs to be tried for being a criminal and proven he is a criminal, because Twitter doesn't count. There's a lot of accusations, but it needs to be proven still. Doesn't look good for him, but does need to go to court and be proven. And if so, if you can imprison someone, people will see there's consequences. In 2007 and 2008, the same thing happened, but for 700 billion, and no one was arrested. Not a single executive went to jail for doing exactly what SBF just did, but to banking customers in the United States. So think about that.
Do you think there will be a bailout like there was back then?
No, because the government bailed out the banks because it would have crashed the whole economy. This is a very limited $8 billion retail customer, crypto institutional. They were harmed, but it's not going to crush the economy. It's not going to spill over into the mainstream economy. So
what is Partisia Blockchain doing that would ensure that this type of situation would not occur?
Well, you can have on-chain order books. That's the future. The future is decentralized, and it's also transparent. So the DTCC is the clearing agency in the United States that basically knows where all the different allocations of stock are at. So there's a central authority that can see this guy owns that, this firm owns that, this woman is her personal, this is her personal wealth. This is a massive hedge fund over here. They can see where everything's happening, but it's not transparent to the whole public. Everything needs to go on chain so everyone can see, because if it's open source and transparent, the amount of tools and companies that build off that, that's how an economy thrives. Imagine how many companies could form by creating new analytics platforms where you could see everything in real time and trace things. It would cause so much more market efficiency, so much more transparency, way less fraud, because when you know that no one can see that you're borrowing shares that don't exist, sell them to somebody, you're taking almost no risk, because if you're going to make money based on you're exploiting something, the fines haven't added up. The fines that have been received, it's like a guy makes $1 billion profit, naked short selling a stock he doesn't own. He gets fined $80 million. I mean, that's in their calculus. There needs to be consequences. People need to go to jail for these crimes, because if you do, you might see people stop doing it. If SBF gets out here and doesn't get in trouble, what's the incentive then for the next schemer? So there's two things. One is we need to use blockchain to increase transparency. Blockchains like Partisia Blockchain are built to scale with sharding. So we're not there yet. There's a long way to go for this industry. The technology continues to get better. It's faster, it's more scalable. And so maybe if it's not us, someone else, but there's going to be products and blockchains that can have complete transparent settlements of real assets on chain where you know outstanding positions at all times. And if you had that transparency, you wouldn't have this backdoor dealings and you could see everything more clearly, and it could prevent this type of, over leveraged collapse. Or if there was over leveraged collapse, it'd be obvious that it occurred so that there would be a faster time to react for whoever the other counterparty could have been.
So do you think that the FTX crisis on top of Terra Luna and Celsius has weakened the industry, or do you think we're going to come out stronger?
That's a good question. The reputation is absolutely tarnished because of mainstream media. They don't do their job. Again, where were they to report on the ground and go research what's going on in the Bahamas? They're not there. So they don't care. So their reporting is going to be about, a complete lowest quality possible, where they're going to probably just put headlines out like crypto is just a big Ponzi scheme, a big scam. There was a scam that occurred through all this leveraging. Here's the thing. I mean, 3AC was known to be leveraging. They were known to be borrowing. And those people who made those agreements with them, they had contracts in place. And if you were, excuse my sort of blunt way to say this, if you were kind of dumb enough to just give $500 million to some offshore firm who said they're going to give you 10% interest a year, I mean, nothing in life is free. There's risk reward ratio. So if the real bank can't get you that, but some offshore fund of two guys claims they can, you knew you were taking risk. So don't get me wrong, those guys definitely lied and misrepresented things, at least from the public available evidence. But what FTX did is so much worse, because there was no contract like that with their users. Instead, they were virtue signaling how much they protected their user funds and never would do something like this. It makes it way worse. And then Luna is bad, but we also haven't seen enough evidence of insiders. If insiders were writing each other emails saying, hey, this thing's a Ponzi scheme and it won't work because if a third of the money tries to get withdrawn, it'll collapse the whole thing. But they kept representing to the public how safe it was to buy UST, that would be really criminal. But I don't know that I've seen that evidence yet. They could have just been delusional developers who thought they made something that was bulletproof, but that someone exploited. And who was it? Was it FTX that exploited it? And that's kind of where I'll leave the last part of this. Is something else to remember. In trading, one person's loss is always another person's win. So in this process of UST collapsing, liquidations occurring, FTX or Alameda losing 8 billion. Who won the 8 billion? Where did it go? There was a counterparty that liquidated their assets. I'd be very interested to find out where the funds ended up.
All right. Well, good to hear this insight from you, Brian. Any last words for our community?
Yes. We did not have any exposure to any of this. We took our early contribution round in USDC. We've converted most of that to bank accounts. And to be honest, we've been around this industry a long time, and we've learned from hard lessons in the past. When you had too much exposure into ETH or Bitcoin, even if you're holding it on a private key, running an organization is difficult when you have a volatile treasury. So we had a very straightforward plan, which was to continue raising in USD and always hold that asset. We have a tiny amount of Ethereum. I don't think it's more than 10% of the total treasury, and it's a long-term hold. We believe in the ecosystem. We believe in decentralization. We believe that Partisia Blockchain is here to increase trust and transparency for decentralized applications. We bring privacy to blockchain so that you could coordinate settlements on chain, but still have closed networks that are limited to what the public can see, but you could have more secure settlement of assets that, you aren't going to be, you can still post your collateral, for example, on the blockchain and not just sign contracts that you'll pay later and then have these scenarios where no one has the money and they're all bankrupt and then they can't pay other people they owe. So that's what we're here to do, is bring trust and transparency to blockchain. So I think for us, we're in an amazing position because a lot of the hyped up networks have now been seen for what they really are, which is mostly marketing and a bit of a flawed protocol. So we're in great shape. We have a couple of years of runway with the current team plan, as well as a few hires we're going to continue to make. We, aren't caught up in the headwinds of our token being traded on FTX where users lost tokens. So we're lucky to dodge that bullet. We never took any early contributions from FTX or Alameda. So, we're in great shape. I think that this is the most excited I've ever been about our project, because during the process of the last couple of years, there's a lot of times where there's so much hype in the industry and you get external pressure to hurry up, rush to market, get listed on an exchange. That's not the approach we took. We said, no, that's the wrong way to do this. When you do that, you end up having situations like Solana where the network goes offline for a day at a time. We continue to test our, sort of product and improve it, and, play the long game and do the right thing. So it's going to be a big challenge. One of our huge value propositions is secure interoperability. That's going to be tough. You see the hacks. It's really hard to stay secure, no matter how great and secure you think your tech is. But we think that, we really built something special here that can facilitate the sort of interoperability of both data and assets across different blockchains. So we're going to come to market next year and hopefully make a big splash. We got some new branding coming out that I think is really in line with who we are and shows that how big our vision is and, where we think we belong in this market. So all positive things for Partisia community, which is hard to say in a time like this. But I think that's something to be proud of as a community, as well as the way that our team has managed the last couple of years, so that we're not caught up in this disaster. I mean, we literally have no exposure. So at this current time, and I think in the long run, crypto wins, blockchain wins, because blockchain solves the problem that this centralized entity created, if it's used properly. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Brian. And there is an expression that says the fastest way to get to where you want to go is to go slowly, step by step. And that's exactly what
that's what we. And when we start to, you have to walk before you run, and we're starting to jog a bit. And I think that the way we've paced ourselves is when we get out there and we need to start running, we'll be ready. So really, really positive in that regard. The last thing just to reiterate here is, remember this, when they try to tell you in the media that crypto's broken and crypto's the scam, remember that if we all went to the bank tomorrow to take our money out, they wouldn't have it. Okay. So this is a very systemic macro issue based on the way that the economy has moved towards derivatives and the ability for banks to bet with customer funds. It was called Glass-Steagall in the United States. They removed Glass-Steagall in I believe the 1990s, when Bill Clinton took over. There used to be a law where commercial banks and investment banks were two separate things. If you were a commercial bank that had customer deposits, you could not invest in high-risk investment products with customer money. When they removed Glass-Steagall, that all changed. And then investment banks could have customer deposits they gambled with crazy leverage bets. And ever since then, we've had a boom in the economy because of really aggressive investing. We've also had these massive economic crashes too that come with that when things don't work out. So this is much bigger than crypto. Don't let them tell you that it's crypto's fault and crypto's the danger to the economy. It's not. It's the design of the economy. So talking about things like reinstating Glass-Steagall is something that needs to be discussed. Look, we need to find the root of the problem. So that's where it lies. It's Glass-Steagall and the way that commercial and investment banks used to be two different classifications. What we witnessed with FTX is exactly that. They had an investment bank, which was their hedge fund, Alameda Research, and they had a commercial bank, which was supposed to be a customer deposit, commercial retail user exchange. They mixed the two, gambled, lost all the money. It's nothing that hasn't already happened in the macro economy, and we haven't seen those people get arrested or go to jail. So I know I'm repeating myself here, but as an industry, we need to come together and push back, because they will try to deflect and blame crypto, that crypto is the big danger to the economy, but really, it's not the case.
Well, my thoughts go out to these people who lost a lot of money, feeling really bad for them. And thanks a lot for all your insight, Brian. And then for our community, if you have questions for Brian that you'd like to ask, just shoot those over either in the comments on YouTube or on Telegram or on Discord. But we'll take your questions or your comments and with Twitter as well. And then we'll keep the conversation going. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks, Brian.
See you. Thanks,
Bye.
Jennifer. Thanks, community. See you.
Partisia Blockchain, infrastructure for the greater good.